So 5 months ago, we raised our first 100K, and now we're 2 months out from our functional glasses, and we're also back in fundraising mode. So in this video, we're going to break down what we've spent so far, what we achieved, and at the end, we're going to share the red flags from our very first pitch deck that we pitched in 2023 and how it compares to what we're pitching today.
We've spent just about 50K so far, and we're now 2 months out from our functional prototype. Most of that went into finalizing our liquid crystal R&D, and we also made about 130 3D printed prototypes that we sent out to people for feedback and to gauge how effective they are. This also helps us get our first testimonials for the product. And we also spent it on marketing tests. So this was kind of running ads to see how we can refine our messaging and how we could reach people through different channels. And we also grew our waitlist to over 1,000 people. And lastly, it was just mainly paying for the team as well. So yeah, that's how we spent our first 50K.
So this is our deck from 2023. At the time, we were applying for Y Combinator. So a common theme is that it's super product focused and it never really zooms out to a business level, which is an issue.
We were coming from a point of two designers, and our whole mindset was making a good product rather than developing a strong business at the time. And so in our heads, it was just like, oh, this is a great product. It will just sell, presumably, which isn't how investors think. And then even more so, investors tend to not actually invest in the product you're developing, but actually the team and your ability to execute. And they also invest in the problem space. So VCs in particular actually do not expect your product to do well. They expect it to have to go through a couple of changes or even pivot to something completely different. So what they're investing in at this stage, at a very early stage, is the team, your ability to execute, and the problem that you're tackling.
Yeah. Then moving on to slide 2. What we're trying to do here is just answer exactly what the product is straight away, which is, investors don't want to waste time. They just want to see what it is. But why does it matter, basically? And here we're just jumping straight into what it is. And it's like, okay, so what? There's a great book called How to Pitch Anything, and it talks about the concept of the croc brain or crocodile brain, where if you just spit facts at somebody, they're not going to agree with it. You need to get past this by telling a story and explaining it from just a personal perspective.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, like we were often pitching to people who wouldn't have understood neurodivergence or ADHD or things like that. And so a lot of the time we actually had to sort of explain why this product is doing what it's doing because they wouldn't have initially got it. And so here we're very much just like, again, explaining it without the context of the research that the product actually came from. In fact, there is no problem slide. It's just like solution slide and solution slide again.
So moving on to why now, that's a slide that we still have today because it just shows the momentum as to why this problem is relevant right now, why is right now the perfect moment. But again, it's very, very product centered. So it doesn't zoom out to the business or the market case. And there's actually no numbers either. In itself hard to digest because it's a big block of text. So it would help to be able to visually just consume that a lot quicker than what you have to do right here.
I guess another quick thing is, as you said, we were thinking of the why now as, again, a very product focused thing, but and in an investor's mind, like why now is very much like a business case. And it's usually like this other business is doing something, but they're not doing it like how we're going to do it. And the market demand is here for this kind of product. And that's how we should have framed a why now, but we were very much framing it from the point of view of, as you said, a product.
So this is our market slide, and there's probably at least 5 red flags here. So number 1, all of the markets that we're listing here are super broad markets. So the productivity space, ADHD, the wearables, they're all ginormous. And I think the common assumption is to just take 1% of your main market, but that's very general and it doesn't really show how you're going to execute on this. And investors want to see a very tangible way that you're going to capture your first and I guess most eager market. So it's all about execution and showing how you're going to go about it. Then be careful with your assumptions that come with a certain market. So, for example, we're saying that we're part of the wearable space, but that could easily lead somebody to assume that we're similar to like a watch where we're tracking data and we're also making money from this, but we're not. And we don't really belong in that market, even though, yes, it is a wearable, but technically we're not there.
Yeah. And I think another thing about the market as well is how we did it in subsets. So we said the focus on productivity market is a subset of the ADHD market, whereas it should be the opposite way around. And I remember having a lot of conversations about that. And then typically you'd have your TAM, SAM, and SOM, so your total addressable market and those like ways of framing your market. And we didn't have that here because I'm not sure we even knew about that at this stage. And then yeah, we kind of just threw in some pricing assumptions. At the time it was based on how much I thought the components would cost and how much I thought we could sell it for. And the sale price was just like, okay, well, how cheap could we sell it for rather than like, how much should we actually sell it for to be a sustainable business, which is a much different mindset you have to be in terms of pricing. And yeah, we kind of said that we'd establish in the US where there's a more receptive market, which is true, but the US is such a giant market that if you're not ready to target it typically with a lot of money, then it actually can kill your business rather than grow your business. So again, our execution wasn't really there.
Yeah. And I think if I was doing that again with the same knowledge that I had then, I would put things within ranges, like, for example, the margins, maybe the cost, and just acknowledge what you don't know and how you're going to find this out with whatever money you're getting from the investor. So just being transparent, because you kind of assume that you need to walk in with confidence, which you should, but you should also show that you understand that we don't know everything. The investor doesn't know everything, but we need to find these things out so we can de-risk what we're doing.
So yeah, then on slide 6, this is kind of like a nothing slide. Like, it's not really clear what this slide is about. We're just coming off winning the Dyson Award, and obviously that was really good social proof. It was a really good name to be attached to what we were doing, but again, it's a slide that's not really framing anything for an investor. Something we're also not doing here is the title of each slide isn't framing what it's about, which means that the investor is now entering each slide with their own framing, and the title of each slide can actually help to frame how you want the investor to perceive this slide. And so here we just said add. It's just like, what does that even mean? Like, add. It's almost like we assumed that the investor would not have confidence in what we're doing at this point. So it's like, this is what the investor would be thinking. And like, well, it won this award, and and the award is great, and it's actually what got us going and it's still something that gives us a lot of proof points.
The next slide, we're showing the traction that we had at that point, which is great, but it's also not very helpful. It would be great to show how we plan to expand this or build upon our existing waiting customers. Like, how are we going to grow this? Where did these people potentially come from?
Yeah. And even just the wording here, like we said customers, and they weren't actually customers because they hadn't paid anything. They had just given us an email. And so I remember pitching the slide, and some investors would have presumed that these customers had put money down, but they were just like people on an actual email waitlist.
Yeah, the difference is monumental. And we don't say superpower anymore. Yeah. There's also a balance between using some of your marketing lingo and just being clear about what you're presenting. We are a D2C brand, so we want to shine some of our branding and language a little bit, but not to make it too fluffy where the investor is just being shown a sales pitch of your product rather than your business. Yeah.
So basically, we saw a route of, if you're an employee at a company and you want this device, that the company could pay for it, just like they would pay for a pair of headphones or a new monitor, all these kind of computer things that you get expensed by a company already. They could also expense this product for you. And we sort of tested this at a very early stage unintentionally, where we were actually just looking for help from companies to help us develop the product. And these companies would be like, oh, hey, we're actually looking for something like this. Like, is it already available? Can we buy some? And we were like, no. But even just those messages from companies ended up being traction points for us when talking to investors. We'd be like, oh, this company said that they'd want to buy some if it was ready. So now just give us money so it can be ready. And it actually helped. Like, it really helped because now we weren't just a D2C brand. We actually had this other channel that investors saw as more sustainable and more scalable, because it's like you get into one company, you get into three companies, how many employees does each company have? Like, then they start to do the maths basically in their heads.
And if we just specified maybe even a little bit of numbers of like, oh, on average, this size company has this many employees who are neurodiverse, which is our key target market, and how this would translate to figures, and maybe even indicating like how this would be executed upon. Yeah. Team slide, we're making it happen. Cool title. I actually liked personally how we did the paragraphs for each person. It was kind of like a little bit more story like, but now it's a lot more based on just your credibility and stats, while you can use the presentation that you're giving to spell out the story of everybody, while the team slide is just like, okay, are these guys legit enough to execute upon what they're saying they're going to do?
One thing that would sometimes happen is an investor or someone who's helping us with our deck would say, put the team slide first, like in one of the first two slides, because we're at such an early stage that an investor is actually looking at our team and the problem, less so than how we've executed and other aspects of the business. Whereas other people would say, we're not a team of like ex Google, ex Harvard, Stanford, whatever, like founders. So, it's not really worth doing that. We still get it today. I just think from like a story perspective that it just flows nicer when the team is at the end and it's like, okay, well, here's everything, here's how we've executed, and here are the people who have done it.
Yep, moving on, and we're not alone. So I think it was good that we had this. We're acknowledging that we are young, we don't know everything, and if I was doing something different, maybe I would show some of the gaps that we currently have and who we're searching for, just to show that, again, acknowledging our strengths and our weaknesses and just de-risking a little bit of what the investors are thinking about and showing that we're a step ahead.
So for this what next slide, yeah, it was all very product centered. I don't think we really knew, like we didn't know what we didn't know. So it wasn't even like that we were not thinking about what should be next. It's just we didn't actually know everything that we should be doing next. And so everything was just product focused. There was no commercial milestones or company milestones. Here we're pretty much just showing the technical ones. It wasn't a very comprehensive plan. Like if an investor looked at this, they would just be like, okay, what are you doing between June 2024 and October 2025? Like what's happening there? Surprisingly, we're still on track. Like even though we didn't know what we didn't know, like it's actually, relatively speaking, it was actually a good prediction of what we'd be doing, which is funny. But yeah, it's just not detailed enough to give an investor confidence that we know how to execute on this.
Yeah. Next slide is, again, speaking of product, we're back to the product. And yeah, this is the end. We were chapter at the time. No ask. Focus is our religion. Cool.
Yeah, I guess what is interesting here is how we are touching on what we're going to be doing next. This is probably blurred out, but we did kind of say what we'd be doing for at least the next four chapters of, that's almost why we were called chapter, because we wanted to do all these different chapters of products, which we still do intend to do. But yeah, this was basically us showing to the investor that we're not just this one product, we're actually building out this ecosystem. But again, in terms of sequencing and momentum of the deck, this is typically where an investor's, okay, I've seen your business. What do you want? Basically. And we're not asking for anything. We're just like vibes. So, yeah, not great. But yeah, good attempt, I guess. Good start.
It's just too much product and nothing about how you're going to sell it. That's the moral of that story.
I think the first thing is improved vibes. I just love this first slide. I just think it's just like cool. I don't know. But also, you can see how it's gone from Oasis to the focus call, the business, and what we're doing. Right. So straight away,